Hello friends and welcome back to the Unity Diaries. This is the third part of the episode. Let's start. The courtroom had already been tense, but nobody was prepared for what happened next. For several minutes, the room had been filled with the kind of silence that only appears when everyone realizes that something much bigger than a family disagreement is unfolding. Robyn Brown remained at the defense table, visibly shaken, while Meri sat across the room with a collection of documents that seemed to carry years of unanswered questions. What began as a dispute over family decisions was suddenly becoming something far more serious. Robyn finally stood. Her hands were trembling, and her expression had changed completely. She was no longer presenting herself as the confident woman who had tried to hold the family together. She looked frightened. "I never took anything," she insisted, her voice rising as she tried to defend herself. She claimed that Meri had not wanted the child and that she had only stepped in because Meri supposedly was not ready to take responsibility. But Meri did not respond immediately. Instead, she looked toward the judge. There was no official adoption order. There was no completed custody proceeding establishing Robyn as the legal mother. There were simply documents, signatures, and decisions that had apparently been made behind closed doors. And then another name entered the conversation. Cody. Meri explained that Cody had warned her that speaking publicly could have consequences. According to her account, she had been told that if she challenged the story, he could portray her to the television production team as unstable or unreliable. That statement changed the atmosphere instantly. Everyone turned toward Cody Brown. He had been sitting quietly, but now every eye in the courtroom was on him. His face looked pale. His jaw was tight, and he seemed unable to decide whether he should speak or remain silent. The judge looked directly at him. "Mr. Brown, do you deny these allegations?" Cody said nothing. That silence became one of the most powerful moments of the entire hearing. Meri then reached into her bag and pulled out another folder. She placed it carefully on the table before sliding it forward. She explained that the folder contained documents relating to the transfer of care. The papers were dated only a short time after the child's birth. Meri's name appeared on an earlier version, but another name had been written over it. Robyn's. Meri pointed out that the original writing had apparently been covered, leaving traces underneath. She claimed that her authority had been taken away without her freely agreeing to it. "I didn't willingly give him up," Meri explained. "I was pressured into it." The courtroom became completely still. The judge began reading the papers. Slowly. Page by page. Then the judge looked up. Meri was asked whether the child knew the truth about his biological mother. Meri nodded. She explained that the child had grown up believing Robyn was his biological mother. The revelation was devastating. For years, according to Meri's account, she had watched from a distance while another woman occupied the role she believed should have been hers. Christine Brown could no longer remain quiet. She rose from her seat, visibly emotional. "Meri, you're his mother," she said. Meri looked toward her. Tears began to fill her eyes. She explained that she had given birth to the child, yet for more than a decade she had watched from outside his life, while the public story suggested something entirely different. The judge eventually called for a short recess. But before the courtroom could fully settle, the judge announced that when proceedings resumed, the court would begin examining allegations involving parental identity and possible misrepresentation. That announcement sent a wave of whispers through the room. Robyn returned to her seat shaking. Cody leaned toward his attorney. Whatever he whispered was not clear to most people in the room, but Meri was watching him carefully. Then something unexpected happened. Cody lost his composure. He suddenly stood and accused Meri of controlling the narrative. His voice became louder. He argued that Meri had been unstable and that the other family members had not been present during the difficult period he described. But there was something different about his anger. It did not sound like confidence. It sounded like panic. He pointed toward the judge and then toward Christine and Janelle. He claimed that there had been pressure from the television network, financial complications, family reputation issues, and countless other problems that he believed he had been forced to manage. Robyn tried to stop him. She reached toward his arm and quietly asked him to sit down. Cody pulled away. He continued speaking. He insisted that Meri could not understand what he and Robyn had supposedly been dealing with. That was when Meri stood. She did not shout. She did not interrupt him. She simply looked at him and said that he had just revealed more than he intended. The room fell silent. Meri explained that Cody had effectively admitted that decisions had been influenced by the television production, the family's public image, and the desire to protect the program. The judge immediately began taking notes. The court reporter continued typing. Christine looked furious. She accused Cody of allowing the family to believe that Meri was unstable while hiding the circumstances behind the scenes. Cody turned toward Christine and accused her of abandoning the family. Christine fired back that she had left because she could no longer tolerate what she believed were years of deception. Then she said something that stunned the entire room. She accused Cody of erasing Meri's role as a mother simply to protect the family's public image. The judge slammed the gavel. Enough. The sound echoed across the courtroom. Cody was warned that he was approaching contempt of court and that he would remain silent unless directly addressed. He finally sat down. Robyn stared at him. And in that moment, something seemed to change between them. There was no longer the appearance of two people confidently defending the same story. There was fear. Meri had not won anything yet, but she had forced the courtroom to look at the story from another angle. And she was not finished. The judge returned to the earlier issue of the DNA evidence. Meri had previously mentioned that someone had contacted her and helped obtain a sample. The judge asked her to explain exactly how that happened. Meri took a breath. She said the events began during a family wellness retreat. The children had been involved in activities connected to the event, including art therapy and other programs. One of the younger children became ill and did not attend, but the oldest son did. Meri described him as a teenager who had grown considerably and whose appearance reminded her strongly of Cody. But what caught her attention was not simply his resemblance to Cody. It was the resemblance to her. Meri explained that a friend of hers, a nurse who happened to be working at the event, recognized the boy from photographs she had seen years earlier. The nurse told Meri that there was an unmistakable similarity. Meri did not approach the boy herself. She said she did not want to create a confrontation or put him in an uncomfortable position. Instead, the nurse asked whether Meri wanted to know the truth. According to Meri, she initially told her friend to leave the matter alone. She had already endured too much. She feared what another discovery could do. But the nurse reportedly told Meri that she deserved to know the truth and that the child deserved to know it as well. Eventually, a simple ancestry screening was arranged. Meri explained that there was no pressure and no dramatic confrontation. The teenager agreed to participate. A sample was collected. A consent form was completed. Then everyone waited. Weeks later, the results arrived. Meri said the results showed an extraordinarily strong biological relationship, including evidence of a maternal connection. The courtroom went silent again. Meri looked toward the judge. She explained that the evidence did not merely suggest a resemblance. It pointed directly toward a biological connection. Cody appeared stunned. He whispered that this could not be happening. Christine turned toward him. She questioned how he could have allowed Robyn to occupy the role of mother while Meri lived with the pain of believing her child had been taken away. Then Robyn spoke. Her voice was quieter than before. She looked at Cody and asked whether he had told her that Meri had voluntarily given up the child. Cody froze. Meri did not react dramatically. She simply looked at Robyn and said that the truth had finally exposed who had been telling the story inaccurately. At that point, the courtroom no longer felt like a routine family dispute. The allegations had expanded. There was DNA. There were custody documents. There were questions about signatures. And Meri had another folder. She opened it slowly. This folder was older and more worn. It contained documents that appeared to relate to the Brown family trust and Meri's financial interests. One of the papers was dated several years earlier. The judge examined it carefully. It appeared to be a transfer agreement involving Meri's interest in a family entity. The document suggested that Meri's ownership interest could be placed into another company under certain conditions. But the most troubling provision concerned what would happen if Meri were considered emotionally or mentally unfit. Under that language, her interest could potentially be transferred permanently to another member of the family. And that person was identified as Robyn. Christine immediately reacted. She accused Kody and Robyn of taking Meri's financial interests away from her. Meri clarified that she had never knowingly agreed to such a permanent transfer. She claimed Kody had presented the paperwork as something temporary and connected to tax matters. The judge continued reading. Then the judge reached one particular signature. The room changed again. The judge compared the signature on the document with other verified examples. The handwriting appeared different. The slant was inconsistent. The pressure appeared different. Even the baseline did not seem to match. The judge carefully stated that a forensic examination would be necessary before reaching a final conclusion, but the preliminary appearance raised serious concerns. The word forgery entered the courtroom. Kody's attorney immediately looked concerned. Robyn leaned toward him and whispered urgently. Kody did not answer. For the first time, he seemed to understand that this was no longer simply about a family disagreement. If the signature had been forged, the consequences could be much more serious. The court recessed, but nobody seemed ready to leave. Reporters whispered among themselves. People in the gallery discussed what they had just heard. Christine and Janelle looked at Meri. Meri sat quietly with her folder closed. There was no celebration on her face. She looked exhausted. Years of being questioned, dismissed, criticized, and portrayed in ways she believed were unfair had finally reached a courtroom where documents could be examined rather than simply discussed. Janelle asked Christine whether she believed Kody could really have forged the document. Christine admitted that she did not know for certain, but she believed the evidence was becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss. Janelle looked toward Meri with tears in her eyes. She wondered aloud whether they should have recognized what was happening sooner. Christine placed a hand on her shoulder. They had been kept away from the truth, she said. Then the courtroom doors opened. Everyone looked toward the entrance. A woman walked in carrying a black briefcase. She appeared to be in her 30s, dressed conservatively, with a serious expression. Nobody immediately recognized her. She approached the bailiff and handed over a sealed file. The bailiff read the document and immediately turned toward the judge. There was a new emergency filing. The evidence had been submitted anonymously. Robyn stood abruptly. She demanded to know who had sent it. The woman did not answer. She simply left the courtroom. Within moments, she was gone. The black briefcase remained. The court clerk opened it and discovered a USB drive. It was not labeled. The judge examined the submission and was told that its preliminary contents could affect several pieces of testimony already given. The judge made an immediate decision. The court would resume without delay. A witness recall order would be issued. Christine looked confused. Meri, however, seemed to understand that someone from the past was about to return. Then the doors opened again. This time, the person entering the courtroom was someone the Brown family knew. Mariah. Meri's adult child. The gallery began whispering. Mariah had not been expected to appear again. But the court had subpoenaed them because the new evidence contained testimony connected to them. Meri's expression changed. She looked protective. Kody sat upright. Robyn looked terrified. The judge instructed the bailiff to bring Mariah to the witness stand. Mariah took the oath, then looked directly toward Kody. They explained that they were not there simply to defend Meri. They believed Meri did not need someone to speak for her. They had come because someone else had been unable to tell the full story. Mariah opened a file. Inside was an old letter. The letter had been written by Meri years earlier. It had never been mailed. Mariah explained that they had discovered it hidden inside an old drawer. At the time, they had not fully understood what it meant. But after hearing the testimony and seeing the documents introduced into court, the meaning had become clear. The judge requested the letter. Mariah handed it over. As the judge read, the courtroom became completely silent. The letter described Meri's emotional state after giving birth. It described fear, confusion, pressure, and the feeling that her voice did not matter. According to the letter, Meri believed she was being pushed away from her own child. It also described conversations in which she was allegedly told that it would be better for the child to be raised away from controversy. The letter claimed that Cody and Robyn had presented Meri's emotions as a reason why she should not remain in control of the situation. Mariah continued explaining what Meri had written. The family television environment had apparently become part of the pressure. The fear was that another difficult family story would create problems for the program. Christine struggled to hold back tears. Janelle lowered her head. Then the judge turned toward Cody. The question was direct. Had Cody told Meri that she was emotionally unfit and that television executives wanted her to relinquish her parental role? Cody remained silent. The judge repeated the question. Finally, Cody nodded. The gallery erupted. Christine looked shocked. Janelle whispered that he had admitted it. Robyn looked at Cody as though she could not believe he had acknowledged it. Mariah's voice became softer. They explained that they had lost years with a sibling they barely knew. They described the pain of realizing that their mother had lost a child while the family maintained a completely different public narrative. The testimony left the courtroom emotionally exhausted. But there was still one person who had not fully answered the questions. Cody. When he stood again, nobody knew what to expect. There was no shouting, no accusations, no attack on Christine, no attempt to blame the network. He kept his eyes lowered. His hands were clasped. Then he said two words that changed everything. I lied. The courtroom froze. Meri stared at him. Christine stopped moving. Robyn reached toward him. Cody continued. He admitted that he had lied to protect himself, the family, and the public image surrounding them. He acknowledged telling Robyn that Meri had voluntarily surrendered the child. He admitted portraying Meri as incapable of custody when speaking to television representatives. He also admitted that he had not told the other family members the truth. Cody said he knew that if they had understood what was happening, they would have objected. Then came the most damaging admission. He acknowledged that he had arranged the paperwork. He had made calls. He had participated in the process. And he admitted knowing that the signature on the trust document was forged. Meri's expression changed. There was no triumphant smile. There was disbelief. Because sometimes hearing the truth after years of waiting does not feel like victory. Sometimes it simply opens wounds that had been closed for survival. The judge asked Cody directly whether he was admitting to deliberately misrepresenting a child's maternal identity on legal paperwork and participating in fraudulent transfers involving the family trust. Cody answered yes. He said he was prepared to face the consequences. The courtroom did not erupt. Instead, people began crying. Robyn covered her face. Christine turned away. Janelle covered her mouth. Meri remained still. For years, she had carried the weight of unanswered questions. Now the man at the center of those questions had acknowledged that the story she had been told was false. The judge instructed the clerk to enter Cody's admissions into the record. The matter would be referred for further examination by the appropriate district attorney's office. Then the judge turned toward Meri. The judge acknowledged that nothing said in the courtroom could restore the years that had been lost. But the court could recognize the truth. And that was what the judge intended to do. Meri finally cried. Only one tear appeared at first. But it represented years of waiting. Years of being misunderstood. Years of wondering whether anyone would ever believe her. The court was not finished. Judge Halverson returned to the bench and explained that the preliminary decision would address several immediate issues. First, Meri would be recognized as the biological and legal mother of the child based on the evidence presented. A formal correction of the relevant records would be initiated. A new guardianship process would follow. Robyn reacted immediately. She objected. But the judge reminded her that she could file a formal response. For the moment, however, Meri's maternal standing was recognized. Meri closed her hands tightly. Being recognized did not erase the years she had lost. But it gave her something she had been denied for far too long. Recognition. The judge then addressed the financial evidence. Properties associated with Brown Development LLC and related entities would be temporarily frozen pending a forensic audit. Any interests transferred from Meri under circumstances involving pressure or duress would be subject to review. The judge indicated that disputed interests could be restored pending the final findings. Christine reached for Janelle's hand. It was not a celebration. It was support. The court also ordered that the questionable signature be referred for criminal review. If investigators determined that the document had been forged, Cody could face additional charges. Cody lowered his head. There was no angry speech this time. No explanation. No attempt to dominate the courtroom. Just silence. The judge continued addressing potential financial consequences. Any earnings connected to the disputed identity claims would be placed into escrow while restitution issues were examined. Robyn appeared devastated. The public story she had spent years living inside was beginning to collapse. The judge paused before delivering the final message. The court could not repair every emotional wound inside the Brown family, but the court could establish what the evidence supported. And on that day, the court was returning authority to the truth. The courtroom remained quiet. There was no applause, no celebration, no dramatic cheering. Meri simply held the old letter. Christine wiped a tear. Janelle held Meri's hand. Robyn remained seated, overwhelmed. Cody kept his eyes down. For the first time, he seemed to have nothing left to say. The courtroom eventually began to empty. People moved slowly. Reporters whispered. The family members remained behind for a moment. Meri stood in the center aisle holding the letter that had once been hidden in a drawer. Christine approached her. There were no cameras between them. No producers. No audience demanding a reaction. Just two women who had spent years calling each other sister wives and were now standing in the aftermath of a devastating family revelation. Christine told Meri that she should have recognized the warning signs sooner. Meri's lips trembled. She answered that perhaps they all should have. Janelle joined them. The three women embraced. It was not an embrace of victory. It was an embrace filled with grief, understanding, and everything they had been unable to say for years. Robyn walked past with her attorney. Her face was wet with tears. She did not speak. She did not approach Meri. Perhaps there were simply no words capable of repairing what had been exposed. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Cameras surrounded the entrance. Questions came from every direction. Would Meri seek custody? Would she pursue additional legal action? Did the child know the truth? Would television executives face investigation? Would Meri sue? Meri did not answer. She walked away. For once, the moment did not belong to television. It belonged to her. And the story was not over. Because the court had uncovered the identity issue, the questionable paperwork, the trust transfer, and the admissions. But there were still questions about how far the deception had gone. There were questions about money. Questions about the family trust. Questions about the television production. And most importantly, questions about what else had been hidden. Meri had finally been heard. But the truth she uncovered was only the beginning. Part 2. The courtroom doors closed behind the Brown family, but the consequences of what had happened inside were only beginning. For years, the Brown family had presented an image of unity, faith, marriage, family loyalty, and shared responsibility. Yet the testimony had introduced an entirely different possibility, that major decisions had been made in secret, that certain family members had been excluded from information, and that the public version of events might have been dramatically different from what happened behind closed doors. Meri walked away from the courthouse carrying the old letter. That letter had once been hidden. Now it had become evidence. The irony was difficult to ignore. The document that Meri had written when she felt powerless had eventually become one of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting her version of events. But the biggest revelation was still the confession. Cody had admitted that he had lied. He had acknowledged misleading Robyn. He had acknowledged misleading the television production.